iPhone 14 Pro long-term review, still worth the upgrade. In our long-term review of the iPhone 14 Pro, we differentiate between Apple's marketing machine and nicety of features. With the iPhone 14 Pro and iPhone 14 Pro Max, Apple introduced plenty of new features. We have a new, faster processor, satellite connectivity, improved thermal performance, and more. After living with the iPhone 14 Pro every day for the last few months, we wanted to revisit a review to see what features would up not much more than hype and which ended up as truly useful. Always on display. One of our most asked for features preceding the iPhone 14 announcement was an always on display. It was a possibility with the iPhone 8 Pro, but it was apparently scratched at the last moment. While testing competing Android handsets, it had always been one of the few features we wished Apple would take and expand upon. Apple delivered and even improved upon the always on display post-release. After first getting our iPhone 14 Pro a few months ago, the display took some getting used to. We constantly thought our iPhone was actually on and we needed to turn it off, but that was just the new display. Now that we've adequately adjusted to it, it feels indispensable. Without touching our phones we can see the time, see and attend to notifications, as well as any live activities that are ongoing. Despite many believing it is just another way for Apple to make you use your iPhone more, it has caused us to actively use our phones less. We don't have to pick up our phone to check things like a timer or the bowl game score, we can already see it. This stops us from grabbing our iPhones and getting sucked into an email or social media rabbit hole. Funny enough, it took our iPhones being on all the time to cut our usage. Cameras. Apple consistently iterates on the cameras, and this year had one of its most substantial upgrades to date. It moved to a massive size beam sensor, and used pixel binning to output beam photos. In reality, most users won't notice this. The output is still beam, and few are going to play around with the full-size beam Pro option. We can see some low light improvement, but it's minor without seeing pics side by side. What was surprisingly helpful were the new zoom levels. Apple now lets you move between prams, muix, peaks, and bakes optical zoom levels. The peaks zoom is created by using the center beam of the size beam sensor, effectively cropping the outer edges of a higher resolution image, to create an optical quality zoom without the need for an additional camera lens between the standard and telephoto lenses. We found ourselves zooming quite often to peaks in plenty of indoor situations. Before this option, if you wanted peaks zoom, you'd have to digitally zoom in on the old beam sensor, losing quality. Plus, you can take muix, peaks, and bakes zoom portrait mode shots. This may seem small, but it is one of the things we noticed most after months of using the iPhone 14 Pro. Dynamic Island. Arguably, the most talked about new feature of the iPhone 14 Pro has been the Dynamic Island. This reimagining of the front-facing camera module has taken a static notch and turned it into useful information. It has perhaps single-handedly changed the feeling of the phone the most. Pop-up alerts that used to obfuscate the display no longer do that. The low power alert would pop up as a modal and force you to tap out of it, but now, that can now show in Dynamic Island. You can see charging status without having to open Control Center, see when your AirPods connect, see an AirDrop file download, and much more. Not to mention live activities that will show, such as timers, scores, Uber Eats orders, and so much more. The now playing music GUI is delightful, allowing you to quickly control it with less tapping than accessing Control Center. If you have an Apple TV, the two controls can display in the Dynamic Island. Pause, open the remote, or jump forward or back quickly from that interface. This is an entirely new UI element that comes into play with so many facets of the phone, and it reinforces Apple's entire ecosystem from the software to the hardware, to all of its other devices. Worth the upgrade. Inventory of iPhone 14 Pro is finally starting to normalize, which means if you're interested in one, you should be able to get it with little delay. This is good news as would easily recommend picking up the iPhone 14 Pro over an iPhone 14 or iPhone 8 Pro. There are always features that end up being hyped by Apple, but end up underwhelming as you use the device. Some things are nice, but the always-on display, the Dynamic Island, and the updated cameras have left a significant impression on us. 3 months later, iPhone 14 Pro is still worth the purchase. iPhone 14 Pro Pros. Always on display. High performance at 15 bionic. Upgraded size 15 camera. Notch traded for Dynamic Island. Long battery life. Crash detection. Emergency SOS via satellite. iPhone 14 Pro cons. Reused physical design, again. One size of pram beam camera sensor, but two beam sensors. Still lightning, no us. Rating, 4.5 out of pram. Where to buy the iPhone 14 Pro? Apple's iPhone 14 Pro is available for purchase, with wireless providers and Verizon offering incentives on the latest device. For the latest iPhone deals, be sure to head over to our iPhone 14 Pro price guide. If you have a used iPhone, you can also check out our Apple trade-in deals for exclusive cash bonus on pre-owned devices, putting more money in your wallet for a new iPhone 14 Pro.